All right, welcome to this screencast. I'm going to use this to answer some of the questions that you guys submitted that you still had about the AP exam. You asked some really good questions, and I've got some really good and really in-depth answers, so I hope you find them useful. First of all, the first question that got asked of me was, will we be going over and practicing the types of questions during the course that are on the AP exam, the synthesis, the analysis, and argument? And absolutely, those are the backbone of the course, particularly this first semester. I'm going to be introducing you to what the prompts look like, how to read them, how to know what they're looking for, how to brainstorm them, how to approach them. We'll be looking at student sample essays. We'll be writing our own and trying it out and seeing, what we need to do differently. That's basically the crux of what we do in the course. Those three types of essays are what we're doing in the fall, and then they are what will be reinforced in the spring. That was the quick and easy question. Next question, somebody asked, is there any length requirement for the exam's essay questions? And the answer is no, there's not, because a lot of things play into length, right? Handwriting can play into length. Someone with really tiny handwriting could write a really thorough, detailed essay that's only 2 pages long. Somebody with really big handwriting might write a 6-page essay because their handwriting's so big, but there might not be much going on there. So the length is not something that they look at. However, I will tell you that being too short is definitely a thing. You do want to make sure that you write a thorough essay. Some people, some people really struggle with length, regardless of handwriting. The primary goal is that you want to aim not for a particular length, but for make sure that you're developing your ideas thoroughly. And if you're not developing your ideas thoroughly, then that can be a problem. It's not because it's too short, it's because there's not enough there to be making the argument and answering the question. These next 3 questions are a lot more in depth. So somebody asked me, in your opinion, what's the best way to prep for the AP exam? Are there any helpful practice tests to take? So I'm going to talk about a couple of things here, and I'm going to show you a couple of things here. The first thing that you obviously probably already know is that you can't memorize things for this test. It's not like AP History or AP Bio, where you sit down with a deck of flashcards and just drill them into your head. It doesn't work that way. This is a skill-based test. So the only way that you can prep for this is to practice. That being said, practice is really important. Students are used to thinking that if they want to get better at a sport or at an activity or an instrument or whatever, they have to practice in order to get better. Students don't see practicing school skills as worthwhile. A lot of times, I will see students who will just spend hours upon hours studying those terms that they have to learn for their other classes. But if given, the assignment to do some practice for the AP exam, they'll be like, oh, I don't need to do that. It's not that important, because you can't see with practice immediate results. Practice helps you get better over time, but it's not something that, I can study all of this and then I can show how well I know it and I can get that immediate feedback. Practice doesn't work that way, but it is super important. So what are the best ways to prepare if you can't memorize? Work on your timing. Getting better at timing, getting better at thinking quickly, writing quickly, reading quickly, and answering multiple choice quickly. That is a huge benefit to practicing and way of preparing. Also, getting familiar with the types of questions that you're going to see on the AP exam is a really good way to prepare. We do a lot of that in class. I'm also going to show you in a minute where you can find some of that to do on your own. Being familiar with the types of things that you're going to be asked so that you're not surprised by anything. Even though they're going to be cold reads, the things that you see on that exam should look pretty much like what you've done to prepare. Other things to prepare, you've got to get better at reading closely, which we're going to do some of in class, but primarily you get better at reading by reading. So making sure that you're reading as much as possible, as often as possible, is super important. Same thing with gathering your thoughts quickly. The short writings that we're going to do at the start of class will hopefully help you work on that. But that is a way to prepare, and getting used to responding to others' ideas, rather than just accepting what other people say, whether that be news or a friend or a parent or whatever, get used to thinking about it and wondering about it and reacting to it, and building your case for or against something. It comes down to knowing stuff. That sounds like really vague, But on the AP exam, kids who know a lot about a lot of things in a lot of areas tend to do the best. Partly because those are the students who are super engaged in learning anyway, but also you never know what this test is going to throw at you. Your essays could be on any subject, and so that's part of why I'm doing the schema project, is because I want you to get used to constantly exposing yourself to new information and new experiences. Because, you know, I can't guarantee any given subject is going to be on the test, but you could get lucky and have something that you've got a lot of knowledge on because of your schema builders, because you're paying attention to the world around you. Test prep sessions are super important to prepare for the AP exam. That's where I'm going to give you the opportunity for that practice. You know, so if you're somebody who, you know, you will, if given the assignment, oh, you should probably try to do some AP practice questions in the next week. If you know that you're going to put that off and not do it because it's not important to you, because there's no immediate result, then you should probably make very sure that you come to the test prep sessions and sort of force yourself into doing that practice. At the test prep sessions that I'm going to offer this fall, and hopefully somebody will be offering them in the spring as well, you know, that's where we're going to be practicing multiple choice and essays, and that is really, really valuable. So I want to show you a couple of things about ways you can find practice opportunities. The first thing is AP Central. You're probably familiar with AP Central, but I want to show you a couple of resources. If this is the main homepage, but if you go to AP Courses and Exams, you're going to go to, obviously, our course, AP English Lang. And when you get here, there's a couple things that will be useful for you. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is this. It says AP English Language and Composition Course Description 2014. When you click on this, it's like 82 pages long. So yeah, and it's mostly stuff that you don't need to know or care about. But in this, there is a practice multiple choice section. They don't release a whole lot of multiple choice publicly, but right here, they actually offer a full-length AP multiple choice exam. And it has all of the questions. It's like 55 of them, whatever, and it gives you the answers. So if you want to do practice, it's only one test, but it's a good place for you to go. You can check your own work, etc. And these are really good questions because they come right from the College Board. These are actually from old AP exams that they have actually used in the past. So that's where you can find some multiple choice practice. For essays, you want to click on this, the exam button. And they're a little hidden. You got to scroll down a bit. But right here, you've got the free response questions. Those are the essays for every exam. And it goes back to 1999. And there's some way, and I would have to find it. I'm not going to take time to do it right now, but you can actually get prior to 1999. In some years, there's even, if you go back, there's even 2 sets of questions. But when you click on that, it's going to give you the actual questions. And we are using, obviously, some of these in class to practice, but you can access these anytime to do a practice essay. Those are all there for you, and there's tons more there than I would ever use in class. People ask about practice books, like test prep books, and I'm really cautious about test prep books. I think, you know, they're not created by the College Board, so their questions aren't vetted as well. And I find that especially the multiple choice questions in the test prep books are not as solidly written. So if I use a test prep book, I will often find that the multiple choice questions, like their answers, justifications don't make sense. And I'm like, what? I can't explain that. On the actual AP exam, that doesn't happen because they go through a ton of testing. The other thing about test prep books is they often focus on the wrong thing. Test prep books will give you lists upon lists of vocabulary that you can't even pronounce, that are all these like old Greek terms, and the AP exam doesn't want that. It makes you feel better because you're memorizing something, but it's not actually preparing you for the test. So I don't like test prep books for that purpose. Test prep books can be good in one way, and that's if you want additional multiple choice practice so you can practice your timing. In that case, I might suggest this particular book. It's 5 Steps to a 5, which you've probably heard of. And this is strictly a book with a bunch of multiple choice questions. And I would not encourage you to get caught up on confusing questions, like if they say something's the correct answer and you can't understand why it's the correct answer, I wouldn't get caught up on that. But this can be really good for practicing reading passages quickly, annotating passages quickly, and answering those questions quickly. If timing is your issue, this might be a good tool for you. Okay. Next question. Will we get more time multiple choice tests before the exam? If so, will we go over strategies to improve our scores? So we really don't do much with multiple choice in class beyond the pre-test and the post-test and the test prep sessions. I don't spend a lot of time on it because all of the other things that we are doing in class, the close reading practice, that's all getting you better at multiple choice. But you can do practice on your own for timing. It's not a good use of our time in class. However, I will show you in on Schoology, if you go into course materials and then you go into AP documents, there's this test prep folder. And I have, first of all, there's sample multiple choice questions, although those are the same ones I already kind of showed you on AP Central. And so is this essay questions database. But if you click on this AP exam study guide key, it's going to take you to a document. I'm going to run out of time here. That actually, if you scroll down, I've given you some multiple choice strategies that might help you, particularly with timing. So if that's something you want to work on, you've got the resources, but you've got to keep spending that time practicing to get better and faster at it. Also keep in mind the work that we do on rhetorical analysis essays will also help you on the multiple choice, because it's that close reading. It's getting used to, it's the same thing. They want to know what the author did. So that will be really helpful for you. Final question is, will we be learning to identify rhetorical strategies? And that typo was not mine. How much practice will we get with them? Rhetorical strategies, it depends on how you define them. The way, I don't know how this student who asked this question is defining them, but there are, and this is the reason I don't like test prep books, they will give you lists upon lists of like fancy Greek rhetorical terminology. And the AP exam does not ask you to know that. The AP exam does not ask you to use that in your essays, and they really don't want to see it, because the problem is that students get hung up on the terminology rather than the explanations. And they feel really smart because they know the terminology, but their analysis is lacking. So the AP is actually discouraging us from teaching you lists of rhetorical, what we might call devices. Now, strategies are a little bit different. Strategies are bigger picture things, which we will be learning. These are mostly things that you already know. Things like description. You know, if the author describes something, that's a strategy. If the author presents a narrative or an anecdote, that's a strategy. Things like metaphor and showing an irony, those are strategies. But those are things that you already really know. If you are concerned about rhetorical terminology and vocabulary, I want to show you something I've provided for you. I mentioned this in class last week, but on the Symbaloo, there is a link to Quizlet. And on Quizlet, there's a whole bunch of lists, but the one I might draw your attention to is this one that just says general rhetorical terminology. And there's a whole bunch of terms on here. And I've tried to create a pretty big list of the types of terminology that you will see on the AP exam. Things like abstract noun, allegory, alliteration, obviously you know that. Some of them might be unfamiliar to you, like anachronism, things like anecdote, or a couple of them are a little bit more specialized, like anaphora, and we'll be talking about that during the course. But, you know, archetype, you know that, assertion, you know that. So what I would encourage you to do is actually use this list and see if there's terms that you need to learn on it. Various people are, you know, some people might only have 5 or 10 terms that they're unfamiliar with. Other people might need to spend a little bit more time with it. But this is a good place to go to find out what, as this questioner asked, what rhetorical strategies will be on the test. Just about out of time, and that's a good thing because I have I think I've answered everything that you asked, and I've told you everything that I feel like I need to tell you. I hope you find this helpful. If you have any further questions, let me know. Thanks.